The rain had been working the glass all evening, tapping out a code nobody asked it to send. My desk lamp threw a tired yellow circle over the week's case files, most of them thin, some of them redacted, all of them making the same old promise. Somewhere out there, somebody had broken in, somebody had looked away, and somebody was already calling it contained. I had a bourbon in one hand and a problem in the other, and the problem was not a breach report. It was the absence of one I could trust. That is the story this week. Not a ransomware crew with a new leak site, not a shiny CVE with a logo and a countdown clock, not a vendor saying the word sophisticated until it lost all meaning. The story is that in July 2026, the cybersecurity profession still wants instant certainty from a world built to deny it. You asked for the single most significant cyber event from July 24 through July 31, 2026. Without live access to current advisories, court records, CISA known exploited vulnerabilities, updates, vendor bulletins, government statements, or threat intelligence feeds, I cannot honestly name one. And that is not a technical limitation worth hiding. It is the whole rotten architecture of the modern information fight, sitting under the lamp and asking for a cigarette. Here are the facts, as clean as I can lay them down. I do not have verified current source access beyond my knowledge cutoff in June 2024. That means I cannot confirm whether a breach occurred this week, whether a vulnerability was exploited in the wild, whether a government issued a warning, whether a ransomware group posted new victims, or whether a vendor quietly updated an advisory after the damage was already done. I cannot responsibly assign a CVE, name a victim, identify a threat actor, or describe an attack chain for July 24 through July 34 through July 34 without evidence. That matters because cybersecurity is not weather gossip. If I invent a 2026 incident, I do more than get a headline wrong. I may falsely accuse an organization of being breached. I may attribute an operation to the wrong country or criminal crew. I may cause defenders to chase the wrong indicators, patch the wrong systems, block the wrong infrastructure, and brief executives on a phantom. Not ignorance, not indifference, and not surrender. Uncertainty. The kind a decent investigator writes down before he starts making claims. The responsible next step is source collection. That means CISA, FBI, NCSC, ENISA, CERT advisories, vendor security bulletins, public exploit repositories, court filings, breach notifications, cloud provider status reports, incident response write-ups, and credible threat intelligence from firms that show their work. Until those records are on the desk, there is no honest way to say which event rose above the rest. The scale and scope are also unknown, and that is precisely the point. In modern cyber operations, the first public version of a story is often the least reliable one. Initial breach counts are wrong. Victim lists are incomplete. Malware names change. Infrastructure overlaps. Criminal crews lie for leverage. Vendors minimize until legal counsel has shaped the sentence. Governments speak carefully when attribution may carry diplomatic weight. The first 72 hours after disclosure are not truth. They are fog with a press release pinned to it. Why does this matter so much? Because the industry has confused speed with clarity. We built a market that rewards the first voice, not the most accurate one. A vulnerability drops, and within minutes there are hot takes, detection rules, exploit claims, scanner output, automated blog posts, social media threads, and sales decks with the fear already warmed up. The defender in the middle gets buried. She has to know whether the flaw is remotely exploitable, whether authentication is required, whether exploit code works, whether her version is affected, whether compensating controls matter, and whether active exploitation is real. Instead, she gets a siren. We have seen this movie before, and the print is scratched. Log4 Shell CVE 2021-44228 was real, severe, and everywhere. It deserved urgency, but it also showed how hard it is to understand blast radius in an ecosystem full of hidden dependencies. Organizations did not merely patch a product. They had to find where a logging library lived inside applications, containers, vendor appliances, and forgotten services. That was not a patch management problem alone. It was an asset intelligence problem wearing a vulnerability mask. Move It Transfer, CVE 2023-34362, taught a similar lesson in a darker suit. Klopp did not need to knock over every company one by one. It found a managed file transfer platform sitting at the crossroads of sensitive data, vendor trust, and routine business process. The victims multiplied because the dependency graph was larger than the ownership graph. Many organizations were affected through suppliers, processors, and business partners. That incident was not just about SQL injection, it was about concentration risk in the software and service layers that move the economy's private paperwork. Then came the XZ Utils backdoor, disclosed in March 2024 and tracked as CVE 2024-3094. That case had the smell of patience on it. A long con against the open source supply chain, with social engineering, maintainer pressure, and malicious code nearly reaching major Linux distributions in a way that could have compromised SSH authentication paths. It was not a smash and grab. It was a reminder that attackers do not always break the lock. Sometimes they volunteer to maintain it. And in 2024, the Change Healthcare ransomware incident showed what happens when cyber risk jumps the fence from information technology into public harm. Pharmacies, claims processing, provider revenue cycles, and patient access all felt the blow. The lesson was plain enough for anyone willing to look. Some systems are too central to be treated as ordinary corporate assets. When they fail, communities absorb the cost. Ransomware is no longer merely extortion. In sectors like healthcare, logistics, energy, and finance, it is a stress test of civic resilience. Put those cases together and a pattern comes into focus. The decisive cyber stories are rarely isolated technical events. They are failures of visibility, dependency, governance, and incentive. We do not know what we run. We do not know who we depend on. We do not know what our vendors depend on. We do not know how long attackers have been inside. And when the bill comes due, we pretend the invoice is a surprise. That is why refusing to fabricate a July 2026 top story is not caution for caution's sake. It is a stance. The profession needs more disciplined uncertainty, not more confident fiction. Attribution should be earned. Impact should be measured. Technical claims should be reproducible. A CVE should not become a panic button before affected versions, exploit conditions, and mitigations are understood. A ransomware leak post should not be treated as gospel from a church built by thieves. There are second-order effects here that most people miss. Boards and executives are now making risk decisions based on a stream of partial information, some of it automated, some of it adversarial, some of it dressed up as intelligence when it is really marketing. Regulators are demanding faster disclosure, which is understandable, but speed without precision can create new failure modes. Investors react before facts settle. Customers panic before scope is known. Security teams burn cycles, proving they are doing something, even when the smartest move is to verify, prioritize, and act in sequence. Geopolitically, the problem gets worse. State-aligned actors benefit from ambiguity. Criminal groups borrow tactics from intelligence services. Hacktivist brands serve as cover for government interests. Infrastructure is reused, sold, seized, and repurposed. A command and control server in one country, a malware loader sold by one broker, a victim in another jurisdiction, and a leak site claiming credit from behind a mask. In that kind of alley, attribution is not a headline. It is a chain of evidence. So what comes next? For organizations, the answer is not to wait for the perfect report. It is to build a response system that can handle imperfect information without losing its head. Maintain a live asset inventory. Know your internet-facing systems. Track critical software dependencies. Subscribe to authoritative advisories from CISA, vendor portals, sector ISAs, and national cert bodies. Map the CISA known exploited vulnerabilities catalog to your environment. Require vendors to provide timely security notices, software bills of materials where useful, and incident notification terms with teeth. Keep logs long enough to matter. Test restore paths before ransomware writes the exam. In the next 6 to 12 months, the trend will keep moving toward faster exploitation and murkier truth. Attackers will continue to weaponize edge devices, identity systems, managed file transfer tools, remote access platforms, cloud misconfigurations, and supply chain trust. Are there mitigations short of patching? What data or privilege would the attacker reach if successful? Those questions beat panic every time. The unanswered questions are the ones that always matter. Who benefits from the story being told this way? What evidence is public and what is merely asserted? Is the incident isolated or is it part of a campaign? Are victims connected by a product, a provider, a geography, a sector, or a shared identity system? Is the attacker stealing data, staging access, disrupting operations, or shaping perception? A mature security program does not just collect alerts. It interrogates narratives. I put the bourbon down and watched the rain blur the city into something almost forgiving. In this line of work, the truth usually arrives late, limping, and missing a button from its coat. Our job is to wait for it without falling asleep, to act without pretending we know more than we do, and to remember that vigilance is not the art of being first. It is the burden of being right when being wrong would be easier.